aggrandizement exercise of praise singing to the effect that the 2020 elections were the best so far in the history of Ghana. He also peddled a lot of falsehood and propaganda and subsequently attacked the integrity of President John Dramani Mahama and the National Democratic Congress. We see this as part of an attempt to divert attention from Nana Akufo-Addo's gaffe on the issue of Cape Coast Airport and his subsequent disrespect towards the paramount chief of the Aflao traditional area and the resulting fallout and public disapproval and opprobrium. It is therefore important that we respond to the vituperations of Bossman Asare, I beg your pardon. Before we respond to the substantive issues raised by Bossman Asare in his seemingly hastily arranged press conference, we wish to make the following observations. The National Democratic Congress, as a party, is deeply concerned about the conduct and posturing of the Electoral Commission as an institution of state, whose actions are subject to the Constitution and, for that matter, have subscribed to their oath of office to act in the best interests of the people of Ghana. These officers are also paid by the taxpayer, and the activities of the Commission itself are financed by sale. Our worry, ladies and gentlemen, is premised on the arrogant, disrespectful, and unprofessional manner in which officers of the Electoral Commission, including the highest echelons, have been addressing the people of Ghana in recent times. In this instance case, the posturing, choice of words, demeanor, and temperament of Bossman Asare are, to say the least, unacceptable. For a man who has been privileged to occupy such an elevated office, one would have thought he would exude the sober aura of a thoughtful and reflective academic who has been given the opportunity to occupy such a high office, even if under controversial circumstances. Unfortunately, this is not what we have foreseen on, and that is not what we have been seeing with the EC in recent times. What we witnessed on Monday smacks of a typical MPP party foot soldier who was given a statement from the party headquarters or Jubilee House to read to the press. The Electoral Commission of Ghana is the embodiment of Ghana's multi-party democracy. It used to be a well-respected institution globally. The respect was rooted in the tradition of respect for stakeholders of the Commission and the exemplary work it had conducted over the years prior to the advent of the current crop of its leadership. It is obvious that the current leadership of the Commission is incapable of living up to the weight and expectation of the office they occupy, and have allowed partisanship and emotional attachment to the appointing authority to get the better half of them. Despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, the Commission maintains an obvious state of delusional stupor that the 2020 elections were both above reproach and continues to shower praises on themselves and attack anyone who shared divergent views on the elections. We wish to make it clear to Bossman Asare and Mensah that the NDC, being a major stakeholder in the democracy and governance of Ghana, reserve the right to comment on the conduct and outcome of elections without being treated with contempt and disrespect. We therefore expect officers of the Commission to live up to expectation by eschewing acts that bring the name of the Commission into disrepute. Ladies and gentlemen, we wish to set the record straight on the attempt by the Electoral Commission to engage in their usual falsehood and propaganda in the attempt to save their blushes and that of their puppet masters in the NPP. We also take note with amusement Bossman Asare's claim that the Electoral Commission is accountable to the people only through Parliament. It is quite clear that the leadership of the EC is uncertain about their mandate and accountability obligations to the people of Ghana. In one breath, the EC says it does not account to any individual and presidential candidate, but accounts only to Parliament. Yet in another breath, Bossman Asare claims he was speaking as part of a so-called program dubbed Let the Citizens Know, which essentially meant he was attempting to account to the people of Ghana. The lack of gravitas, finesse, and appropriate temperament and composure exhibited by Bossman Asare and previously by his boss, Mensah, is a far cry from the authority, dignity, composure, and comportment with which their forebears like Mensah Afarijan, David Denzi Kanga, Safo Kantanka, and Charlotte Osei brought to that high office. Now to some specific issues raised in the press conference. Number one, the voters' register. It is scandalous for the Electoral Commission to state that it compiled a new voters' register and conduct elections within 6 months. This was in complete disregard for Article 2, Clause 1 of the ECOWAS Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance, which states that no substantial modification shall be made to the electoral laws of a member country in the last 6 months before an election. Indeed, the Electoral Commission's attention was drawn to this by the NDC and civil society organizations, but the EC blatantly disregarded same and went ahead to engage in a reckless and wasteful exercise of compiling a new register in the face of the deadly COVID-19 pandemic. This is nothing to be proud of, as it brings Ghana's name into disrepute in the Committee of Nations. And ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of ECOWAS is His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And he goes around ECOWAS countries flaunting the ECOWAS Protocol on Good Governance and demanding that other countries should adhere to the tenets and principles contained in the ECOWAS Covenant on Good Governance. And yet, in his own country, the same covenant was being flouted with impunity for his benefit. And yet, he never saw anything wrong with that. So we are surprised that the Electoral Commission will now come out boldly to say that they must be congratulated for flouting the ECOWAS protocol, when our president is on the neck of other leaders in the sub-region to respect that same protocol. We have stated before and wish to reiterate that the compilation of the new voters register was at the behest of President Akufo-Addo and his MPP, who had waged a baseless and unfounded campaign against the previous voters' register, which incidentally formed the basis of their being elected in 2016. We recall the firm assurances from the EC that they were not going to use the Ghana card and that at most they will replace the old voters' ID and give opportunity for new voters to register. For the first time in the history of voter registration exercise, two young men, Silas and Lambert, were murdered in cold blood, and several others maimed, I beg your pardon. A current cabinet minister of the MPP government, Madam Hawa Kumsin, together with her tax, went on rampage, firing guns indiscriminately. Again, several other innocent citizens were injured, beaten, molested, and harassed. Can you take a look at what happened on these two occasions? Contrary to claims that the new voters' register was flawless, Ghanaians will recall that the exhibition of the voters' register was characterized by chaos. The register was full of errors, such as missing names and photographs, typographical errors, among others, that compelled our flag bearer to end his campaign abruptly and return to Accra to bring pressure to bear on the Electoral Commission to correct such anomalies. Then the issue of the cost of elections was raised. Another bizarre claim at the Bossman Asare press encounter was that the 2020 election was the most cost-effective and they saved the taxpayer $90 million to begin with. $90 million. To begin with, we maintain that this is the most expensive election in the annals of Ghanaian political history. The procurement processes leading to the wasteful registration exercise and the elections fraught with irregularities and obvious cases of cost inflation. The NDC being alone on this position. Some of Ghana's most respected and credible civil society organizations have been at the forefront of exposure of corrupt and bloated expenditure in the procurement processes mentioned above. For instance, in a detailed and widely circulated report issued by Imani Africa, it estimated that up to $150 million United States dollars was lost to Ghanaian taxpayers as a result of the EC's actions. They subsequently described the entire procurement process as opaque and non-transparent. The Electoral Commission kept touting as an achievement its ability to save costs in the 2020 elections. We wish to remind them that even though cost of election is important, what is more important is an honest, credible, non-partisan Electoral Commission that conducts credible elections to safeguard Ghana's democracy. The budget of the Electoral Commission was approved by Parliament. Parliament knows what has been approved and for what purpose, and therefore we leave the determination of how cost-effective the 2020 election budget has been to Parliament. In any case, if the EC is trumpeting on the rooftop that it has saved money from the election, why has the Commission not paid temporary staff recruited both for district level elections held in 2019 and the 2020 elections. Saving of money means refusing to pay people their legitimate dues, and then you come crying, touting yourself that you have saved money. Suffice it to say that since the EC has continually peddled falsehood, we in the NDC take whatever they say with a pinch of salt. As we speak, the NDC continues to receive credible reports of non-payment of some of the officials recruited during the 2019 district elections, the 2020 registration exercise, 2020 exhibition of voters register, the 2020 general elections, who have also not been paid. The second point I would like to address is the claim that President Mahama maligned the Electoral Commission. An interesting feature of the EC's press conference was the claim that by raising the issues, President Mahama was maligning Jim Mensah and other members of the Commission. Instead of looking for non-existent evidence of being maligned, Jim Mensah, Bossman Asare, and their colleagues should carry out self-introspection and an honest assessment of their stewardship, and they will find that it is their own actions and inactions that have led to the precipitous loss of confidence in their stewardship by the Ghanaian electorate, as found in the National Security Strategy document. The National Security Strategy document openly claimed that one of the security threats in this country is the loss of confidence of the population in the Electoral Commission. And we thought that the Electoral Commission would do a sober introspection, find the causes, and to avert that security threat, instead of praising themselves and blaming all other persons who offer constructive criticism as to how they should improve their work. The excessive partisanship, open hostility towards the NDC, and the brazen manipulation of the electoral process are the occurrences that have led to the loss of credibility of the EC, and not the evidence-based presentation made by President John Dramani Mahama. We have not forgotten the politically motivated removal of their immediate predecessors and the controversies it generated. Everything they have done so far confirms the fears of observers that they were brought in to ensure the re-election of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Number 3, discovery and destruction of over 1 million ballot papers meant for Ashanti. Whereas Bossman Asare purported to be responding to President Mahama's valid criticism of the EC's mishandling of the 2020 elections, it was obvious that he had not paid attention to what the former president had said. He was trying to answer a question he has not heard. He claimed that President Mahama said that the EC thumb-printed 1 million ballot papers for the MPP. President Mahama never made such claims. What he said was that the NDC discovered an excess of 1 million ballot papers printed on the blind side of its agents, and that in the days leading up to the elections, some individuals were arrested in possession of thumb-printed genuine ballot papers which bore the EC's validation stamp, and we stand by that position. The general public will recall that prior to the printing of ballots, the NDC raised an alarm that the Electoral Commission failed to give political parties ballot statistics. The ballot statistics are the details of ballots to be printed by various security printing houses. The provision of ballot statistics to the political party agents at the printing press is another transparency measure that enables party agents to ensure that printing houses do not print ballots in excess of what is required for a given election. The refusal of the EC to supply parties with the statistics timeously gave way for the printing of excess ballots that were widely distributed across the country, particularly in Ashanti region, to compromise and to rig the elections. Ghanaians are witnesses to the viral videos of persons who were arrested by the police with thumb-printed ballot papers that had official seal of the Electoral Commission. And you can take a look. You can take a look. This was in Ashanti region, and I believe Ejuso.
Video of it in the printing house. There's another video, the printing house video. This is where somebody secretly filmed.
Yeah. These are the over 1 million ballot papers that were printed on the blind side of the agents of the political parties after printing had closed and all extra material destroyed, and a certificate issued to that effect. See them? They were all destined for Ashanti region. And this was where, after we upon our insistence, they were all shredded and bent. With this development, the Electoral Commission clearly has questions to answer as to how its official stamps found their way into the hands of unauthorized persons who use same to perpetrate fraud. Again, Ghanaians will recall that NDC caused to be bent 1 million ballot papers designed for Ashanti, which were concealed at InnoLink printing press. The facts are as follows. On 20th of November, the waste material for InnoLink printing press were destroyed under the supervision of Electoral Commission and security agencies in the presence of party agents who duly signed the certificate of disposal. The practice is, this is the certificate of disposal. The practice is that during the printing, there is 24-hour monitoring by party agents. So when the printing starts, it never breaks. So every party runs a shift, a 3-shift period of 8 hours per shift. So agents will go for 8 hours, other agents will go and replace them for 8 hours. Now when the printing is completed, there is binding. Binding will be completed. And then the material, the proper ballot papers are dispatched from there straight to the regions. Now, whatever is left over, including the mold with which you do the printing, are all put together and destroyed, and which destruction is witnessed by all the agents who were part of the printing. After satisfying ourselves that those extra materials had been destroyed together with the molds, we issue a certificate of disposal, and all the agents will sign. That is the certificate you see there. So on 20th November 2020, the waste material for InnoLink printing press were destroyed under the supervision of the EC and security agencies in the presence of party agents who duly signed the certificate of disposal, dated 20th of November 2020. Subsequently, the plates with which the printing is done were also destroyed on 25th November 2020, and representatives of EC, InnoLink, political parties, and the security agencies duly signed the certificate of disposal, and we were given copies. So one certificate of disposal covered the destruction of all the excess material. The second one was signed after the destruction of the molds with which the ballot papers were printed. So it means that the EC, political parties, and all would have no material at the premises of InnoLink at all. And that is what is evidenced by the signing of those certificates. It stands to reason that by that date, all waste material had been destroyed. However, when the printed ballots at InnoLink were transported to Ashanti region on 22nd of November 2020, it was discovered that there was a problem with the ballots of Afija Kwabre South constituency, and therefore the ballot booklets were returned for reprinting. Afija Kwabre, I want to believe, is the constituency for the National Security Minister. I believe so. Upon their return to InnoLink printing press on 25th November, our agents went there to supervise the reprinting of the ballot papers of the said constituency, and discovered, to their dismay, boxes of ballot papers concealed in one of the offices. When they caused the boxes to be opened, they were found to contain excess presidential ballot papers for Ashanti region. Alarmed by what they saw, they filmed the ballots and inquired from the supervisors what those ballots were meant for. I believe the picture will show, because it was the hand of God that sent us back to InnoLink for us to discover that these are ballot booklets. All these things printed and stashed somewhere in one of their rooms. When confronted, the supervisors at InnoLink gave all manner of incoherent answers. One claimed that it was backup. Backup meaning that when the ballot papers ran out in Ashanti region, they will still come and have some to go and add. The other lady in charge of the binary claimed that they were meant for runoff. So they knew the presidential election was going to go into a runoff, so they must print the ballot papers in advance. Our agents at that point insisted that ballot for runoff could only be printed after the first round of elections when it becomes necessary. And that will be for only 2 candidates. 2 leading candidates, and not all 12 presidential candidates. Seemingly confused, officials of Inoleng could not provide any further tenable answers. That's why. Before the printing, we determine in advance how many polling stations we have and the population at each of the polling stations, and therefore the number of ballot papers that ought to be printed. Then after that, we print extra, say 15% or so, extra 5%, and add it to the various constituency consignments, bind it and dispatch. So that extra is meant for handling of situations of spoilage and other things. So there couldn't be any reason why you will be printing ballots after these have been dispatched and you claim they were back up. And the other reason was most absurd. Runoff ballot papers are printed with the pictures of only 2 leading candidates in the previous election. You haven't finished the election. You don't even know who the 2 leading candidates will be. And you are printing ballots with 12 candidates, the same as you use for the main election. So they couldn't be for runoff. So when all these reasons were defeated, they now accepted that they have done a wrong thing. So they should allow us to go and destroy. So we called in national. All the security agencies were part of this. And we shredded, evacuated this, and sent them for destruction. So I'm surprised that anybody with his head properly screwed on will be denying such fact. Sorry, I promise not to be angry today. When EC officials were asked about the development, they denied any knowledge of same. EC said that they don't have any knowledge about the printing. They did not instruct Inolink, and they have no idea why this company was printing these extra ballot papers. If you are not part of it, why are you denying it? Our agents then insisted that the ballots should be destroyed forthwith. They ensured that all the ballots, which were estimated at over 1 million, were shredded and destroyed, as you saw in the picture. Attempts to get other party agents like the MPP to observe the exercise, which took place on 27th November, failed. Our agents therefore accompanied the CID and the National NIB officials, together with officers from Inolink, to destroy the excess ballot papers. So the evidence is already in the custody of the Ghana Police Service. So Bossman Asare should not be wasting our ears by asking us to provide evidence. What is left is for the Attorney General, according to our laws, to give the clearance for the offenders to be prosecuted. So that is where we are. It has nothing to do with President Mahama, who is only repeating what happened. The criminals are known. And it is the responsibility of the Electoral Commission and government to ensure that those criminals are brought to book. So, just find out. The first certificate of disposal was on 20th. That dealt with the excess papers. Then, 25th, the destruction of the molds. So the certificate is issued after all the destruction. Then you issue a certificate that we have testified that this thing has been destroyed. The 1 million extra ballot papers were destroyed on 27th. So is Bossman Asare telling us that the certificate of disposal was issued when the documents were not destroyed? He should come up and explain to Ghanaians. You issue a certificate after the destruction. And these were destroyed on the 27th of November. How can you be showing a certificate issued on 25th November as evidence of the destruction of the 1 million extra ballot papers? We noted that in response to the news of the destruction of the over 1 million excess presidential ballot papers for Ashanti region, the Electoral Commission issued a statement dated 29th November 2020, in which it dishonestly and disingenuously stated that the materials that were destroyed were waste materials and proceeded to display the certificate of disposal dated 25th November 2020. This was dishonest and disingenuous because the EC was fully aware that the 25th November certificate of disposal was issued after the destruction of plates and not waste material. The over 1 million excess ballots in question were destroyed on 27th November 2020 and could therefore not have certificate of disposal dated on 25th of November. We are deeply concerned about the duplicity of a hitherto reputable institution like the EC, which claims its core values are transparency, fairness, and integrity. The Electoral Commission has a lot of integrity deficits to address. There were similar incidents in the Greater Accra region involving the discovery of some printed presidential ballot papers in about 8 constituencies where NDC agents ensured that such excess ballot papers were destroyed at the various police stations. They had printed and thumb-printed extra ballot papers for 8 other constituencies in Greater Accra. Incidentally, when all these were discovered and destroyed, NDC won in almost all those constituencies. So they knew they couldn't win those constituencies, and they were going to use those thumb-printed ballot papers. We don't know how many we could not intercept. Is the picture? Oh, we should proceed. Ghanaians will recall that there were reports of persons caught in constituencies such as Ejura, which you saw earlier, Manson Kwanta, and Asawasi, all in the Ashanti region, with thumb-printed ballot papers with the official seal of the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission, therefore, has more questions to answer as to why it supervised the printing of excess ballot papers and how their official seals found their way into the hands of unauthorized persons. In view of the apparent complicity and collusion by indolent printing press in this heinous crime, NDC is at a loss as to why the Commission continues to do business with that company. When the 1 million ballot papers were discovered, the Electoral Commission denied knowledge and involvement in the printing. Now, if as a bank, you give a security printer a certain number of your checkbooks to be printed, after printing and you taking delivery, you realize that that security printer has printed several extra checkbooks without your authorization. Would you continue giving that company work to do? Why is it that InnoLink remains one of the printers of the Electoral Commission as we speak? Ladies and gentlemen, with these facts and unimpeachable evidence before you, the NDC has no other choice than to accept the challenge by the Electoral Commission that the police should investigate the allegation of the printing of over 1 million excess ballot papers. We are going a step further to lodge an official complaint with the police and to provide them with the evidence and assistance to investigate the matter to unravel the truth for all Ghanaians to see. Bossman Asare claimed that the EC knew nothing about the security arrangement for the 2020 elections and could therefore not be held liable for the extrajudicial killings of innocent citizens. This is a shocking display of dishonesty and lack of respect for the people of Ghana. First of all, the EC was the organizer of the elections that took place in 2020. It was impossible for any other institution to fashion out security arrangement for the said elections without recourse to the Electoral Commission. It is important here to underscore the fact that the EC and the Ghana Police Service led the National Security Task Force that was responsible for all security arrangements for the elections. Indeed, the person in charge of security at both the collation center and polling station are the returning officers and presiding officer respectively, both of whom are officials of the Electoral Commission. When you go to any polling station, the person who can give security instructions to the security personnel is the presiding officer. If he directs that even a party agent must be removed from the area, the police officer will comply. The same thing happens when you come to collation center. The returning officer is in charge. And these are officials of the Electoral Commission. So don't you see something wrong with anybody who is making that assertion that Electoral Commission has nothing to do with security in elections? Don't you see it? Well, if you don't, I see it. The NDC and other observers have incontrovertible evidence that it was the conduct, inaction, and determination by various EC officials to subvert the will of the electorates in various constituencies and the subsequent demand of the NDC representatives that the right things be done that led to the horrific killings of 8 of our compatriots. The EC can therefore not extricate itself from the complicity in the loss of lives witnessed in the 2020 election. The killings made the 2020 elections most violent and bloodiest in the history of our republic. This also marks the first time in the 64-year history of Ghana that 8 innocent Ghanaians have been murdered in cold blood by suspected MPP thugs clothed in police and military uniforms. This was what was happening. And you see, throughout the This was at the Collation Center in Techman. You see, so in short, throughout the press conference, Bossman Asare kept repeating the laws and the procedures of Electoral Commission that, in his view, made it impossible for the election to be rigged. We grant him that. The laws and procedures will make it impossible for the election to be rigged, to the extent that the Electoral Commission itself follows the laws and procedures. So if the laws and procedures exist, and the Electoral Commission officials are flouting the laws, it means that they are compromising the elections. And it is the right of every Ghanaian to resist the flouting of those laws by officials of the Commission. So if that resistance leads to violence, then who caused the violence? We said that before voting, you open the ballot box, show it openly, close it, allow everybody to put their seal on and all that. So that makes it impossible. They have serial numbers on the ballot papers that can be checked and so on. What happens if your officials are refusing to open the ballot box and show? And somebody who knows your law is insisting that before the election proceeds, let's open the ballot box and show its emptiness before we proceed. And there is confusion. And people are shot and killed. Who caused them? If fraud can be checked by serial numbers, and your officials are preventing people from checking and cross-checking by serial numbers, and the people are insisting that let us check the serial numbers so we can detect the fraud, and there is confusion and people are killed, who killed them? So it is not sufficient to flout the laws. Our case is that the laws exist. It is only when they are implemented faithfully that you can check fraud. But your officials prevented the laws from being implemented. And that was the cause of the conflict. So if there is violence, it is placed at the doorstep squarely of the Electoral Commission and nobody else. Why? Were there not more people in Techman Market than the Collation Center? Did the soldiers go there to shoot at anybody? The attempt, therefore, by Bossman Asare to distance the Commission, whose collusion with the MPP to usurp the mandate of the people at places like Techman South, Odododiodio, Savlugu, Ablekuma Central, and others, which subsequently led to the incidents of bloodshed, is most shocking and unfortunate. History will always recall that it was under the leadership of this Electoral Commission that several Ghanaians lost their lives during the elections. It is even more shocking that in the face of these deaths and numerous acts of violence and impunity before, during, and after the elections, Mensah and Bossman Asare can claim that this is the most successful elections in the history of Ghana. How can a successful election lead to the death of 8 innocent citizens who are to be served by that election? On the election petition, Bossman Asare referred to the petition we filed before the Supreme Court and cited the dismissal of same to mean we had free and fair elections. We have always maintained that there was travesty of justice in that particular case. And I would like to repeat what I said elsewhere yesterday. that an ailing judicial system is more dangerous to any democracy than an ailing electoral commission. Because if an electoral commission is faulting and you have an upright judicial system that is up to its responsibilities, that is neutral, and that focuses only to serve the interests of Mother Ghana, then you can always use the judiciary to correct the wrong things that are being done by the Electoral Commission. So you cannot be blaming Electoral Commission alone for these wrongdoings without bringing in the judiciary. Because laws are laws, and they are meant to be implemented. And where you implement the laws, it is only after you implement the laws that the intended outcomes are achieved. So the electoral laws are designed to have a free, fair, and transparent elections. So if anybody is flouting those laws, then that person is denying the country free, fair, and transparent elections. And it is there that the judiciary comes in to make sure that the laws are implemented so that free, fair elections can be delivered. So if you have the judiciary failing in that respect, then they are complicit in the killing of democracy in the country. The EC chairperson deliberate evasion of scrutiny using obscure technicalities was the clearest indication yet that they had something to hide. All Ghanaians witnessed how basic processes allowed in previous election petitions, which are critical to unearthing important information necessary for the disputed elections, were blocked by the panel hearing the petition. In fact, there was an interesting case where one of the justices had written a book espousing certain key principles. And that book is a celebrated book that is being used in our law schools countrywide. When we're trying to apply the principle he himself espoused in his book, that is being used to educate up-and-coming lawyers, he took a decision that is different and counter to what theory he himself has propounded in the book that is being used to teach law students. That tells you about how bad that case was handled. And Bossman Asare kept referring to the fact that I said at the court that I had not come there to attack the integrity of their elections. Go and look at the reports. Everything said in the court is documented. What I said when I was asked to present alternative results, I said that I am not the electoral commissioner. And I don't have a responsibility of declaring election results. But I know that some election results have been declared which is wrong. That is why we have come here to question. So it is not my responsibility to declare election results. But I have every right to question the authority that is established to declare the election results if that declaration does not make sense. And that is why we have come to the court to question. And that was what we were blocked from questioning. So the judiciary also is equally culpable. Now, there was an issue about why we focus on Jean Mensah as far as the flaws in the presidential election collation and others are concerned, and not on the Electoral Commission. Bossman should go back and read the laws governing elections in this country. The law designates the chairperson of the Electoral Commission as the returning officer of the presidential elections, whose responsibility include the collation and declaration of results of all the polling stations in the country. This is the reason why, in scrutinizing her work, the focus cannot be on any other person than the chairman of the Electoral Commission. The law says the chairperson of Electoral Commission, you are the returning officer of the presidential elections. The duty of returning officer is to collate all the results of polling stations throughout the country and then declare. So if you have, and that function cannot be delegated to her assistant or any other person. It is only Jane Mensah who occupies that chairperson position, and her work is what is under scrutiny. So we cannot be referring to the whole commission when it comes to the wrong compilation, collation, and declaration of presidential election results. Ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude, they are saying this is the best election ever held. Do you know that the second most important function of the Electoral Commission, provided for by Article 45B of the 1992 Constitution, is to demarcate electoral boundaries for national and local government? Their first function is to compile credible voters register. Second function, demarcate electoral boundaries, i.e. constituencies in the case of these elections. This was what they failed to do. There was a monumental failure on the part of the Commission to discharge this all-important function in 2020 elections, because this is the first time ever in the history of Ghana where the people of a whole district were disenfranchised, resulting in the lack of representation in the 8th Parliament of the 4th Republic of Ghana, that particular district that comprises of Central Kofi, Akpafu, Lolubi, and Likwe. This constitutes a serious breach of the law and democratic principle of no taxation without representation. How can you have a section of the whole country who pay taxes and yet they are not represented in Parliament? They are not represented where the taxes are determined, and yet they pay taxes. And the one who created this situation expects the citizens to be clapping for them for a good job done. In conclusion, we take note with satisfaction of Bossman Asare's call on Ghana's police service to investigate the facts put out by President Mahama. Given that President Mahama was on solid ground when making these statements, the NDC stands ever prepared to assist in any credible investigation into the matters raised. We are aware, however, that Bossman Asare's call is only a red herring, because he cannot feign ignorance of the fact that the police service is already seized with all the evidence on this matter. On the specific printing of 1 million excess ballot papers and arrest of persons in possession of the printed ballot papers, the Ghana Police Service carried out the arrest and therefore should be providing update on the status of investigation to the population. All that Bossman Asare needs to do is to call on the Attorney General to ask the police to prosecute the offenders. It beggars belief that Bossman Asare will now join the call for investigation into the killing of 8 Ghanaians 10 whole months after the police service had assured Ghanaians it was looking into the killings. The truth is that there is no real interest on the part of the police and the government to bring the perpetrators of the heinous crimes to justice, because the killings serve the end of the Akufo-Addo, Bawumia and MPP government insofar as it ensures their retention in power. So let the new IGP show the same commitment he has so far shown in bringing errant members of society to book over misdemeanors on the more serious crimes of extrajudicial killings. And the evidence is right in the bosom of the Ghana Police Service. The foregoing demonstrate clearly that the 2020 elections were the worst in Ghana's history. The EC must accept this truth and work towards improving its image and regain the confidence of Ghanaians and all stakeholders. They must shed the current gap of arrogance, intolerance, lack of consensus, outright obstinacy, and obduracy, an open display of hostility towards key stakeholders like the National Democratic Congress. They must immediately revert to the previous posture of accommodation, tolerance, consensus building, respect for stakeholders, and political transparency exhibited by their forebears. Despite our strong reservations about their performance, as expressed by President Mahama and the NDC on various platforms, the NDC remains prepared to engage the EC and all other relevant stakeholders in constructive dialogue with the view to introduce the much-needed reforms to improve upon our electoral architecture. We hope that Mensah, Bossman Asare, and the Electoral Commission will seize this historic opportunity to mend fences and usher in a period of mutual respect and cooperation to prevent the unfortunate incidents of the past. Finally, it is our expectation that the unacceptable conduct of the 2020 elections will be the last, and that steps will be taken to restore confidence and credibility in our electoral process. May God bless our homeland, Ghana.